Hello, everyone. I'm Constance Friedman, a managing partner and founder of Modern Ventures, and I want to welcome you all to our next speaker series. And this one is featuring one of our investors and a good friend, Larry Levy. So we wanted to bring Larry Levy on today because he is, I don't know, another iconic player in the real estate space, but much more than that. And he has a very a very impressive background and as well as a different take on approaching our markets. So Larry is really self-made success. He started out in the restaurant space. He founded Levy Restaurants in 1978 and went from a single deli in Chicago to a worldwide organization and even public organizations that he has invested in and ran. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But he's also a major real estate developer, owner, and operator. He has some major real estate investments in marquee buildings here in Chicago downtown. And he also is he's endowed and started several of the entrepreneurial programs at Kellogg School of Management, where he got his both his undergrad and MBA. So Larry, welcome to our speaker series. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Constance, and it's an honor to be an investor as well.
Thank you. And an early investor, I should say, and an early supporter. So we of course really appreciate that. So Larry, I didn't do you justice on giving your background. So, I think it would be really helpful to hear from you all the amazing things and, sort of what led you to do what you do and what drives you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to make one correction. I went into real estate first.
Oh.
It was during the Vietnam War, and I was looking for a job and got a job at a startup real estate brokerage firm, and I became a commercial broker. And within 2 years, I became the president of that company. And it's hard to believe now, and I'm only reminded of it because I'm selling 100 acres to Amazon right now. I assembled 6,000 acres in 3 different counties in Chicago in my 20s. And soon after that, left that company, split up with my partner after I became president, and then started the Levy organization, which was the real estate arm, and Levy Restaurants was the restaurant arm.
I see. Okay.
But
and why restaurants? Why the?
Yeah. So one of the things we've learned at the Levy Institute, anecdotally, is that successful entrepreneurs, whether male or female, have a overwhelming need for their father's approval. And my father was a heavy guy who lived to eat. And about once a month, my mom and dad would go to a restaurant in St. Louis. They were where I grew up. They were all Italian restaurants. And my dad and mom would talk about that meal for every single night until they went to the next one. And I think somehow or another, some of that is true with me, and the need for my father's approval. It was a little bit sick. I had to, I was a performing SEAL, so he could tell his friends what I accomplished and my brother accomplished. But I think that had something to do with it. And I always loved deli food for some reason. And I'll tell one funny story, but my first person I went to for backing was Jack and Dolly Galter. And those of you who live in Chicago, there's the Galter Pavilion at Northwestern Hospital. And there's a picture of Jack and Dolly Galter with Jack with his arm around her. And they had been backers of mine in some of the real estate deals. And the first thing she said to me is, "Son, I'm very sorry, we cannot back you." And I said, "Why, Dolly? You've always done well with me and the deals have worked out great." She says, "You don't understand. Jewish food has killed a lot of people." And I walk, anytime I go to an appointment at a hospital, we serve 600,000 people a year at that restaurant. And I always thought of Dolly Galter.
But you know what? I think chicken soup is like the thing that always makes me better.
It does. It does. And it was my mom's recipe. So,
Mom's matzo ball and chicken soup. It's always a thing.
yeah.
So, and I guess like so over the years, how have you split your time? Do you kind of focus more on one branch than the other, or has it always been really intertwined?
I've really had three phases to my career. First phase was real estate broker and then real estate owner. And then when we got going in the restaurant business and converted our morphed into a catering business for professional sports, I really put full time into that because it was an extraordinary opportunity. Every city was building a new football, basketball, hockey, soccer, baseball stadium, and we won most of the contracts. And these were big contracts. The Staples Center was $100 million a year in food service. Our highest volume restaurant ever was 25 million. And then we got the Cubs, and we got virtually 60% of all professional sports teams, almost all the soccer teams. And it really became a very big business with great margins. Most of the money went to the team, but when you're doing 100 million in sales at a place, whatever is left over for you is a lot.
Yeah.
And so we grew that business very quickly. We grew it both domestically and in England, and it became really something to concentrate on. I was the CEO.
Great.
And then in 2006, I sold that business to the Compass Group. And so I started the third phase, which is basically with two of my sons running a family office. And in the family office, we primarily invest in, with certain amounts of stock and comfortable things that you should have for liquidity. We invest in very high profile real estate, $100 million plus projects, and venture capital. A lot of venture capital, far more than we should. I think entrepreneurs are attracted to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I guess when we think about how you decide what projects to do, and maybe even some of the things that you're focused on right now, what is it that, where are the opportunities in your mind?
So when the Tax Act passed under Donald Trump, there was something that nobody knew about that came out of it called qualified opportunity zones. And we had a subtenant in our space that was a startup, a wealth management startup called Crescent. And it was started by my very first intern from 40 some odd years ago, Eric Becker, and his partner, Avi Stein, who those of you from Chicago will know from Willis Stein. They were not satisfied with their wealth management opportunities, and they decided to start that. And while they were working out of our office, they saw what we were doing in real estate. So what the qualified opportunity zones are is a chance to defer capital gains taxes. First year was 7 years, now it's 6 years this year. And with a discount, last year was 15%, this year it's 10%. And the new investment you make with the money will never be taxed. I personally have never seen a tax opportunity like this. And it's in neighborhoods that are near bad neighborhoods. Some of them are in the middle of bad neighborhoods. And Abby and Eric came down and said, why don't we do it together? So with our real estate company, which is called Diversified Real Estate Capital, that we own with Mike Miller and Jeff Cherner, that had been investing in cities and projects in fast growing cities. we said, let's see if we can do the same thing in opportunity centers. And very quickly, we raised $465 million. People who had been investing with us, and I'll talk about that at some point, why other people invest with us. We're putting in $1 or $2 million in our projects, started putting in 5 and 10 and 15 and $20 million because they were entrepreneur owners of public companies that were 90 to 100% of their assets, and they could sell 5% and lessen their concentration in those companies, public companies typically, and have a way to defer the taxes. They own the stock for a penny, and the stocks were selling at $100 and $200 a share. So it was a great opportunity. We wound up doing projects in Portland, Denver, Houston, Nashville, Charleston, Washington, D.C., and Omaha, the old ConAgra campus in Omaha. And 4 of the 7 projects were in partnership with Hines, which is a theme of our investing. We love Hines, and they're the best developers we can think of. Always a beautiful building, always on budget, always professional, always beautiful. And we love working with them. They're in our headquarters building. They're our partner in River Point. So we started that fund. Now we're on fund 2. We just passed $200 million in that fund, and the same kind of investors, many of the same investors, but people who have money that needs to be sheltered from taxes. So we have found phenomenal opportunities, and the theme is cities where people are moving from California, might be moving from New York City to start new lives.
Yeah, and there's a huge amount of movement there into the secondary and tertiary cities. So a lot of big opportunity as well. So it's really interesting. And of course, we're focused on tech as well. And with all your venture investing, so are you. How do you bring that tech into, some of these developments and the restaurants that you focus on as well?
So we do a lot of, for the funds, we do a lot of online marketing. We get inbounds online. We're not using huge amounts of technology. I love your Icon investment, because from the day I got in the business, they've been talking about how do we build affordable housing, and this is the first real live opportunity I've seen to do that, and it makes so much sense with the printing. But we use lots of group communication, old modern technology, let's call it. But Hines uses a lot of construction management technology. We are kept up to date weekly on all of our things. And one of the things I do, by the way, that might be helpful to the people on the call is I read everything. And I read all of your reports about every single one of your investments. So that's why I know about Icon. And I think our business is really about to be disrupted in a big way with great assisting through technology.
And what I always like to talk about at the end of these, a little bit about what advice that you have for entrepreneurs. But before I get into that, why don't you tell us about the picture behind you?
Oh, that's so I'm a collector of rock and roll photography, and we have a phenomenal collection. That's Bruce Springsteen standing on Sunset Boulevard with a photograph of himself and Clarence Clemens on a billboard advertising the Born to Run album. He's standing in front of Sunset Records, Tower Records on Sunset, right next to where the original Spago was. And it's an iconic picture by Terry O'Neill. And across from me, I've got a picture of Cassius Clay with the Beatles punching George Harrison. And I've got a picture of Muhammad Ali with Bob Dylan at Madison Square Garden, where Bob was performing and Muhammad was going to fight Joe Frazier after that. I got a picture of Elton John standing on his piano at Dodger Stadium, which I later wound up doing all the food for. That was another gigantic account. And a picture of Jackson Browne, Bruce Springsteen, and Tom Petty at one of the No Nukes concert. I got a picture of Mick Jagger and Bob Marley, and a picture of P. Diddy and Jay-Z and Nelly holding huge stacks of jewelry and $100 bills after De La Hoya lost to Floyd Mayweather. So, and we've got all kinds of iconic photography here. That I grew up in the music business in St. Louis and have always had a passion for starting with blues music and then all kinds of 60s and 70s music.
One of these days we'll be able to get back to going to see those shows again.
Yeah, we are hopefully going to see an outdoor concert in Aspen. It's coming up soon.
Yeah.
Constance, one of the things I'd like to talk about is what I'm doing, why we're doing our real estate the way we're doing it, how we're doing it. So we're big investors in the QOZ fund, but in our individual building investments, what we've done is I've tried to take everything I've learned by being a highly leveraged developer into what happens after you've had a huge liquidity event like I did when I sold Levy Restaurants. So number one, we always hook up with phenomenal partners, Heinz being the best of the best, but we had a partnership with John Buck and Golub in San Francisco, where we built a 760,000 foot office building that Facebook took in San Francisco. And what we do differently is I used to, because I didn't have any money, I'd borrow whatever I could, beg, borrow, and steal from the banks to be able to finance the general partnership part and borrow from a bank, usually 80 to 90% on a construction loan. And the rule right now is we borrow 50 to 65% on the Salesforce Tower, which we're a big part of. We borrowed like 90% on the part that Salesforce took and 50% on the empty space. So real word of advice is watch your leverage. We've had, and you really stress test for almost anything that can happen if you keep the leverage low. It's helped that interest rates have remained low. Legal fees keep going up, construction costs keep going up, but interest has stayed down. But that's a big word of advice. And to find cities where there's natural growth. I mean, 1,000 people a day are moving to Phoenix, and our second QOZ fund, our first building is an apartment building in Phoenix. And so that's big advice. And selecting the partner is probably the most important choice. You know, we work with people that have been around a long time and made all the mistakes that I used to make. And then the other thing we do is we bring in like-minded people. So if you set out as your objective to own the best buildings in the fastest growing cities, I know I don't have enough money to do that. Very few people do. So through my network and now through Crescent's network, we're finding people that are like-minded and want to own part of that. So we put a group together to put $90 million into the Salesforce Tower. We put another group together to buy 321 North Clark, where the new Lettuce Entertaining Restaurants are. And we even have one institutional partner in that group, but it's basically like-minded individuals who wouldn't have the chance to compete with institutions to own buildings like that. So that's our real estate program in a nutshell.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think we understand, well, when we first met, that was one of the things that, you know, you commented on with our strategy, which is, you know, the idea of bringing to, you know, that synergistic value that you can bring for people and kind of bring that right network of people together.
Yeah. And we like to call ourselves value-added investors, and I'll tell you why. So I'm sitting in River Point. I own the land, so I brought Heinz into this deal.
Yep.
But the two biggest tenants are McDermott, Will and Emery, and DLA. They are my lawyers. So real estate is DLA, corporate is McDermott. They have 600,000 feet between them. I brought in Gibson's Italia to be the restaurant here.
That's where you like to eat.
Yeah, that's where I like to eat for sure. And I do love the exercise, so I get to eat. But so we are value-added investors, and our next assignment is to bring the restaurants to the Salesforce Tower. And in a couple of our projects in the QOZs, we're trying to limit the amount of retail because for the obvious reasons, but restaurants will be the primary source of the bottom of the apartment buildings to have some restaurants. And in Dallas, where we're building an apartment building, we're gonna have a restaurant at the bottom. And in Houston, we're gonna have a restaurant at the bottom. And we'll help with that.
Good. And so, I guess one of the other things that we've talked a lot about is sort of the housing shortage. Is that primarily how you're addressing it, is through these new funds?
Yes, and we're going to we have two other funds. We have a logistics fund. So there's a gigantic shortage of as a supply chain gets reinvented, there's a dramatic shortage of high ceiling, properly docked, properly parked industrial buildings, very large industrial buildings. So when I got into business, a 10,000 foot lease was a big deal. Today, you read about 1,000,000 square foot leases all the time. We're building an industrial, 1,600,000 foot industrial building in Indianapolis, which is near all kinds of highways and FedEx hub. It's likely that one tenant will take the whole building, which is crazy. And it's a very unusual product in that one size fits most. So 40-foot ceilings, so all kinds of automation can happen underneath the ceiling, and the docks get laid out in a certain way. And what we learned is that any industrial building built before 2010 is likely obsolete. And so the whole supply with onshoring, with we can't depend on China. We learned during COVID with the warehouses used to try to be close to where the stores were. Now they got to be closer to where the consumer is, to the last mile delivery. And so the whole supply chain has been invented. And then at the end of the year, we're starting a fund for multifamily. There was a dramatic Wall Street Journal headline that said the US is 4.6 million housing units short. That's affordable and every other kind of housing. So we're going to start a fund with that, mostly with Heinz, to do that all over the country. So yes, there's a housing shortage. There's a down payment shortage. But I heard an amazing statistic from Peter Linneman the other day that 300,000 people inherited $50,000 or more because of COVID deaths. And that has driven the early parts of the housing comeback.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one last question, Larry. So, when you talked a lot about the importance of partnership and finding like-minded people to surround yourself with as an entrepreneur. What else? How as a new entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur, what other advice, either going about finding those great partners and finding those great like-minded people, or anything else, what other piece of advice do you have to give to people on this call?
Sure. Well, you are a brand. You are who you are, and over time, you are defined by who you are. So your honor, your integrity is well known. Your success or lack thereof is well known. Never making the same mistakes twice is well known. Where they say entrepreneurs don't make mistakes; they just have expensive learning experiences. I've had a few. The first big building I built, by the way, had borrowed a lot of money, and it was during the Volcker years, and I was building $100 million building, and the prime interest rate was 10%, and it went to 21% in the second month of construction. So, but nobody lost any money, and every lender got paid back, and I made my reputation on that one building, because I worked for 3 years knowing I would never make any money on that building.
Yeah.
And the bank ultimately went down, which was a continental bank. But I learned a lot, and we all do. The bank said, we charge a little more, but we'll always be there for you. If I could use the term bullshit, it was bullshit. And the same people keep coming through for me. The other thing that happens late in your career is you have an incredible network. I know that I am one phone call away from anybody. So the Heinz people called me to help them lease the restaurant at 321 and to lease the restaurant at Salesforce Tower. I made one phone call. And the next day, I think the genius of the restaurant business, Rich Melman, was at both sites.
Yeah.
That's an invaluable something to be able to offer to your partners. And I'm always willing to do that. I want to be the best partner anybody ever had. The other thing that I've learned is, in this business, there are a lot of sclerotic institutions, and they take a month to make a decision, and our decisions are made in a day. And we'll drop everything and do the work. And I'll give you one example. Heinz brought us in as their partner in One South Dearborn, which turned out to be the headquarters of Sidley and Austin. And they had a real complicated lease deal that they were trying to get Barton Brands, which is the owner of Corona, and they wanted to move there, but they had to take over their lease at their building. And my response was, I put my fingers over my nose, and I said, make the deal. Don't hesitate, make the deal, but don't talk to me about it after that. And they made the deal. The building got to 100% lease. We sold the building at a great profit. And the next day I got a call from the partner at Heinz that said, do you know, if we had an institutional partner, they would have said no, but they would have said no after a month.
Yeah.
And by the way, we subleased the space, and it never turned out to be a negative. So anyway, everything you do is part of who you are. And to be in this privileged position I'm in now, where I get selected as the partner for these major projects around the country, is really quite something. And it's because I worked hard. Handshake is all you need with me. Even, and God forbid you have to look at the documents. That's a terrible thing, because your word is your bond. So I'm having a great time now, as you can tell from all these fun things I get to do. And it's much more fun to do it unleveraged than leveraged. And I
with
don't
people
know
you
why,
like.
I don't know why I didn't get liquid sooner. It's been 15 years now.
Well, thank you, Larry. I mean, it's so
Okay.
invaluable. I can't agree more. Honesty and integrity is everything. Yeah, I think it's in the beginning stages, it's really easy to think about, well, you need the capital, you need to go do things, but working with people who you like and can partner with and can trust is absolutely everything. And couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for sharing all these insights. And I, really appreciate it, and really appreciate your partnership.
I appreciate it too. And congratulations on all your success. I can't wait to read your next report.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Constance.
All right. And thanks everyone for being part of this speaker series. And we will see you again next time.